Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, friends. It's Kim Skorupski here in the sunny Galveston Island at the University of Texas Medical Branch. And I'm looking at my friend and colleague, Dr. Elza Mylona. Hi, Elza.
Hi, Kim. Nice to see you.
Oh, it's always great to see your smiling face. I have known Dr. Mylona for, over a dozen years. And when she and I were on a Zoom call recently about a project we're doing, and I said, well, come get back on the podcast. And she said, I've never been on the podcast. And that was one of those, what? How can that possibly be? Been doing this podcast for over 6 years, and I've never had Elza on the podcast. So she's here to talk about a really great, interesting topic we've not covered in the podcast before. And so you're going to be really interested in this one. But first of all, if you don't have the privilege of knowing Elza, who is Dr. Elza Mylona, PhD, MBA? She is the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs and Faculty Development in the College of Medicine and a Professor of Foundational Sciences at Methodist University, Cape Fear Valley Health School of Medicine in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The floor is all yours. Drop some wisdom on us about mergers and acquisitions.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. As you know, through the work that we have done in the group of faculty affairs, this is a topic that I believe is very important for the work that we do and remains timely. The whole thing about mergers, acquisitions, but also other forms of alignments in academic medicine, because they are not longer rare events. They are becoming routine. Academic medical centers and the teaching hospitals that are associated with them continue to face, for example, financial pressures, right? Because they often operate on very tight margins because of the high cost of medical education that we haven't solved yet, the research, and sometimes the complex patient care. So a merger often provides the financial stability by combining with more profitable systems and by doing so, expanding the clinical footprint in that area or in other areas outside of the geographic site that this center operates. They also gain capital to invest in research, infrastructure, update facilities, and the integration of electronic health record. Merging with other systems also can increase access to clinical trials population, something that you're interested, Kim, because of your work so many years with research training sites, but also provide opportunities for additional faculty recruitment. And competitive position is obviously something that all medical schools and health care facilities are looking to help to remain competitive and relevant in a world that is changing and an economy, healthcare economy that is changing so much and so fast. So, yeah.
So, Elsa, I'm so ignorant about this topic. Can you help me understand? Give me like the baseline version of this. How does a merger or acquisition happen? I mean, literally, like logistically, if you look at a map of an area, is it something like I peek over my backyard fence if I'm a CEO, president, stakeholder, trustee, whatever, of XYZ institution, and I'm peeking over my back fence and seeing a system down the street, and I go, hey, I wonder if they'd like to be acquired or merged. How do those relationships even begin? Are these like hostile takeovers? Are these kind of like, let me take you out to lunch and buy a dinner, and why don't you join our team? How do they literally happen?
Yeah, obviously, the question that you are asking is quite political, and we might not have the data of what's happening, but it's usually for a school. a medical school that operates independently or it's part of a main campus, a bigger university system, obviously is it's a financial decision. So what makes the right partner is something that the school explores by looking at the area, by strategic planning initiatives as to where they want to grow, where the opportunity for both clinical and research and education. As you can see, most of the schools today, because they cannot support the education of their students, are expanding and have students in multiple locations. So
Mm,
these are strategic partnerships
mm,
that occur through, again, looking at the budget, looking at the future, and looking at where this place would like to grow. Similarly to the medical school, the healthcare partner is doing the same thing because, again, they want more, they want to reduce expenses, they want to increase the footprint of patient population. They can get into another competitive market.
mm, mm. Well, can I interrupt you with
Of
one
course.
more question? What about areas, rural areas where there's not a lot of access, so there aren't as many opportunities in like a dense urban population? When again, back to my idea of like peeking over the fence and seeing, hospital A, system B, clinic C. What if you're in rural areas or outlying areas where there is not as much opportunity to join forces? How does that work? Or how do they simply expand their lens and have to look geographically further, or is it kind of not even on the table for those
No, actually,
areas?
that's a great question. And for those institutions which are primarily clinical, I believe selecting carefully the partner to join forces with is a very important decision and needs to be explore carefully because those in places won't be able to survive alone in this competitive world and the healthcare economy, as you know, is changing so rapidly and the competition is so hard, so it's going to be difficult for those small places to survive. So, and to capitalize of those opportunities, so many institutions are turning to mergers. I prefer the word mergers and acquisition for reasons that we all understand as a strategy to survive, but also to grow. So for us in medical education, the real question becomes what happens to academic mission in the midst of these deals? And with the work that we have done with a group of faculty affairs for a number of years now, publishing, talking to colleagues, and participating in collaborative projects, there is a growing concern that in the effort to stabilize budgets and expand market share, we may risk losing the core identity of academic medicine. What is the core academic medicine? The commitment to education, right? To research, to patient care, and most importantly, the people who are the leaders, the driving forces for all these areas, and these are our faculty.
Mm,
Faculty are not just employees. They are the educators, they are the scholars and the mentors, they are clinicians and the leaders within every system. And during these transition times, because there is so much going on, faculty are left feeling uncertain, excluded, and sometimes undervalued. That
mm,
affects, as you know, Kim, very well, the well being of the faculty, but also their decision to remain in academic medicine. So we
mm,
have some data from the WMC, right? We say know that almost 60% of these individuals, they will leave within a period of 10 years.
Mm.
That is a huge number because recruitment of faculty is so expensive. So my point here is I'm not saying no to any of those efforts to affiliate with something else. What I'm saying is include the people because that is a financial investment as well.
Mm.
In academia, we talk a lot about promotion and tenure, right? So as we go through a significant change like a merger or an acquisition, the question is, will promotion and tenure systems be appended? So what happens to institutional values? Are they going to replace by corporate priorities? Am I going to be able to teach the students the way I want to teach and be able to provide them feedback and support? And for individuals that they stay in one institution for a long period of time in one system, what happens when the system disappears? What happens to my pension? What happens to my benefits? They're really significant questions. So, for us in the group of faculty affairs, um, we need to protect the academic mission while navigating necessary change. And I believe the faculty affairs officers have a critical role to play in doing just that. Because why? Because we serve as advocates, as guides, as stabilizers. I mean, think of the programs that we put in place to connect with those faculty at the very beginning when they come to the organization, right? To welcome them, to work with them to create career plans. And so at times of crisis like this one, because it takes time to stabilize, right? We want to make sure they look up to us as the place to provide solutions. Often, GFA, faculty affairs leaders, are not part of these conversations. We hear the results later on, and I believe, and this is just my belief, that we lose opportunities. We lose opportunities to stabilize the communication and help the institution create a good communication strategy. So, looking at the data, Kim, are very clear. So, yes, we have that enrollment in education increased after COVID. So, increased by, if I'm not mistaken, by 4.5 in 2024. But this growth, which is significant growth, because that was a real concern of the main universities. Are we going to have enough students to maintain the faculty and be able to continue do the work that we do? So that is good. However, we don't sure whether that increase is even across student categories, especially for freshmen. So the academic medical centers remain under sustained pressure with large systems reporting quarterly and annually operating losses. That's not good. So, for example, Yale, New Haven Health, a major academic hospital system, reporting an operating loss of almost 47 million in the fourth quarter of 2024, despite showing positive annual momentum in fiscal year of 2024. So what are the choices if you're faced, because that ties back to your question earlier, Kim, when you're faced with such a loss, which is tremendous, yes, and Yale remains a top health system, no question about that, but as a thoughtful leader of this place, you need to do something. So to form a strategic merger or a partnership might be a valuable solution to this problem. Thankfully, we don't have, it was interesting, Kim, because after the pandemic, in 2023, we had at a given time 20 hospital M&As, mergers and acquisitions announcement in just 1 quarter. And a survey of hospital leaders at the time found that 75% were engaged in or considering a partnership. We are not there anymore. M&A activity continues right now, but is now more cautious, smaller in scale, and often reactive to financial distress. And I think the reason is that we don't have the 20 in 1 quarter is because of the economy. The economy plays a big role for the slowdown. I want to emphasize that there are significant gains in merging, a true merger, where two institutions come together and strategically identify their strengths and the weaknesses. And the weaknesses of one should be the strengths of the other, so the two of them can create something strong and something that can grow and sustain over time. So the benefits include the financial stability, the broader clinical service, the access to new technologies, the research opportunities, and enhanced market power. So there is no reason not to engage in these types of conversations. The faculty affairs, I believe, play a major role. They play a major role because what happens when the two institutions merge, we have two different cultures, and we can navigate that change because faculty may fear that they are going to lose their academic culture, or they're going to have questions of appointments, of faculty evaluations, of all the things that are important to faculty. And we are in a position early on to respond. Those that they have research concerns or funding disruptions. So what happened to active grants or to happen to research collaborations during these mean transitions? I'm not saying, Kim, that we as an Office of Faculty Affairs and Professional Development have all the answers, but we do have strong partnerships, institutional partnerships, to find the answers for the faculty before they get alarmed by this change. The other thing is teaching and curriculum changes. So they might worry about new course assignments, the FTE changes. Who is going to have control? Am I going to be able to have enough time spent on teaching? Because often teaching, research, and institutional service were so important for promotion and growth of faculty are not always well received when it comes to a spreadsheet, right? It's not necessarily a benefit. And then significant questions will come in regards to governance and leadership. Who will make now the decision? Who reports to who? And sometimes that is the $1,000,000 questions, because we have seen from the past, the recent past, that even the voice of the dean have been reduced, and the power has been reduced when events of this nature happen. The promotion criteria often change because we also get a group of individuals that they need to be nurtured in the academia. That's not their first decision, and they found themselves stuck in an academic situation with criteria that they look at them and say, it's impossible for me to meet that.
Absolutely. That you've hit the nail on the head in terms of identity that you mentioned earlier. If I'm in the traditional academic health center with my faculty title and I'm trying to hit all the tripartite, quartite missions and I have earned through my teaching, my research, my clinical care, my administrative work, these faculty titles, and then we're merging with the practice down the road. And maybe those providers earn a higher salary than I do, and now they earn more than I do, and now I see that they're getting a faculty appointment. That's kind of where I think we have the confusion of, wait a minute, I call not fair. That's not fair. They make more money than we do, and now they have the same titles we do.
Yes,
So that's where the
yes.
identity and the valuing, feeling valued can be diluted.
Yes, so correct. The other thing is the clinical practice is also affected because of new workflows, referral systems, IT integrations, which is, oh my goodness, Lord, with that. And some of the concerns about, because we are faculty affairs, we are there for all faculty. So some equity concerns about women. We can't ignore the fact that women is 50% of the workforce today. But this group is really affected significantly during transitions. Part-time faculty. Part-time faculty is 17% of the total. We have over 200,000 faculty today based on the AAMC data across institutions. The 17% which are part-time faculty are not included in the 200. So we're talking about almost 240,000 faculty. You can include the part-time because these are the ones that they come and fill up gaps that perhaps we have. So I'm coming back to the role of faculty affairs officers as being very significant. We are the stewards of the academic mission. We believe that our faculty are the heart of the teaching, the research, the clinical care, but also the professional affiliations. They carry the names of our institutions to places that wherever they go and be in different disciplines. Without them, there is no mission. So the faculty affairs, knowing from the beginning what is going to happen and be part of the conversation, can amplify the voice in times of uncertainty. They can also serve as a bridge between leadership and faculty. I believe the work that we do, we leave this fine line, right? We advocate for the faculty when at the same time we try to protect our institution, and we knowing what's going to happen, having a better idea, not be surprised by the results, can help us develop an institutional strategy and translate that strategy into language that faculty understand and start dealing early on with their concerns before they make the decision that this is not a good place for them to be.
Well, Elza, I love how you are underscoring the importance of offices of faculty affairs and faculty career and professional development as advocates of the faculty. I remember at Hopkins, my boss, Dr. Janice Clements, who was then the vice dean for faculty, would always say, we're in any room where there's any discussion of any topic that will impact faculty, someone from my office needs to be there just to be that voice, that harmonizing efforts with whatever the goal is. So it's I think sometimes when you're getting down to brass tacks and you're spreadsheeting data and we're looking at money, money,
Mhm.
money. Absolutely, it's imperative. We have to keep the lights on. We have to stay in business. And as you mentioned earlier, who is the lifeblood of this machinery, if you will? It's faculty.
Yes.
So while faculty are obviously smart and understand bottom lines, having people in the rooms to say yes and. So not, I think sometimes the fear of people who are making these decisions are like, well, we can't have these people. We can't have these offices of faculty affairs, deans and provosts and that because they're going to be railing against, don't do it. This is bad. This is bad. Rather than saying, we need them at the table to help us see the way, to help us be mindful of some anticipated outcomes, but unanticipated outcomes. And how can we smooth that road? If something must be, and
Mhm.
certainly we must make a balance sheet balance, if we must do this, how are different ways we can go about it where we're bringing faculty with us rather than just saying, hey, newsflash, guess what just happened? And talking at faculty versus, as you mentioned earlier, having someone with that frame and that lens at the table saying, okay, yes, and if we do this, let's consider all the possibilities of this decision. How will this impact faculty here? Not to be the, doom scrolling negative Nancy, but rather this, we're going to have to deal with this. So how might we
Absolutely.
strategize this?
Absolutely. And you spoke about something that is so fundamental, Kim, and that is the reasons for some of those mergers. The failure of mergers and acquisitions is not because somebody didn't do a good job with the spreadsheet and the finances. These are cultural classes. And that is one of the top reasons that mergers fail. So, faculty affairs, I truly believe we understand the values and traditions that make our universities and our places and School of Medicine unique, and we can work to preserve that identity during the transition.
I missed it. What did you say was one of the top reasons why mergers fail?
Culture clash.
Culture clash. Yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. I want to press double click on that, as my sister always says. Let's double click on that. Double
Yes,
click on culture clash. So that to me says even more imperative that there needs to be some almost anthropological curiosity
of course.
about are we going to be a good match? Almost like fashion sense. Is it okay to mix paisley with polka dots? I mean, are we going to get together? Can we put the cats and the dogs in the same room? You're putting night owls with early birds. How's this going to work out? So you're making me think of an element of mergers would be kind of setting the stage ahead of time, the whole proverbial, let's get to know each other.
Correct.
Let's explore what this relationship could look like. Let's have visiting parties going back and forth to like an exchange program. Let's spend some time, mini sabbaticals, if you will, to see can we see how this might work and what is a delight to have discovered at this other institution? What is a little bit of a head scratcher when you're marrying off, two kids and two families? How are we going to get
Right.
along with coming from two different cultures? So that's a whole fascinating conversation to me as a sociologist and exploring social factors of how that is, you're so right. Gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. Instead of just
Right.
steamrolling it over and going, all right, slap a new logo on your website and put new signs up and call it a day and thank you very much, we're done. Wait a minute.
Yes, just what you said, to create the new logo, you know what it goes into creating, how many identities, what the different values that they are associated with a university logo. This is not a simple thing because universities and academic health systems have a tradition, have a history, and they are very protective of that. So, as we said before, the culture clash is one of the top reasons that mergers fail. Let's look at the literature. What is the number one factor for a successful merger? And that is communication. And comes down to academic affairs truly can build and lead internal communication strategies that set clear expectations, create space for questions, dispel rumors, and truly continue on the journey of building trust with the faculty who are the engines of that operation. So I like, if I may, to offer some recommendations and best practices to support faculty and institutional success during M&As. Early and transparent communication. Start early, even if details are not finalized, and try to share goals, benefits, and limitations in an honest way. And how can we do that? Through town halls, Q&A, regular meetings that we have, all of us, with the faculty. Faculty engagement is another piece. Include faculty in key decision-making groups. Seek their input, listen what they have to say, and show responsiveness to the things that make sense and align with those institutional goals. And if they don't, provide an explanation as to why that is not going to work. Continue as an Office of Faculty Affairs and Professional Development, continue to offer counseling, career support, transition resources for all groups, including the part-time faculty, that it's truly an asset to our organizations, and WIMS, of course, Women in Medicine and Sciences, and have a communication plan that there has a pre-announcement planning, an announcement phase, and then post-announcement updates. We usually do a town hall at the beginning, and then we get busy making all the changes that they need to do, take place. We forget to communicate with our folks. And at the end, we come out there to announce the winning of these efforts. And that is not what we faculty like to do.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to also emphasize, if I may, Kim, today, is to share experiences. There are a lot of our schools that have gone through a process. If they have been successful, what made them successful? If there are areas that they are still working on, or they had to change from the original plan, share those experiences, discuss those challenges, not as a negative comment or impact of we're not going to criticize the institution because we might find ourselves there tomorrow, and together identify solutions that will support the faculty, their well-being of the faculty, and help them retain in our institutions. So again, you might say, Elza, you're biased on faculty affairs, but I truly believe that we have so much to offer during those times. And I plead for more transparency and more engagement of our offices during this process.
Yeah, you're so right, Elza. when I think about offices of faculty affairs and offices of professional and career development, what's unique about us as, say, opposed to our partners in human resources is that more often than not, we in these offices are faculty. We come from the faculty
Yes.
body. We have been faculty. We are faculty. We've done and we do the work that our faculty do. So we are intimately familiar. We live the same life. So we are not advocating as I have insight into, I know some people who we are those same people. And that's a blessing and a curse for me because one of my failures is always I tend to make assumptions like, well, of course people know that. I mean, I sent an email. I mean, of course they know that. We made an announcement at the faculty senate. Well, of course I mentioned it at the something something meeting. And that is where we have to be broken records and saying everything 7 times, complete, just reiterating because sometimes when you say things, people aren't ready to hear it. They're not hearing it. They're not in the right context. They're multitasking. We're multitasking. We're stuffing in information in a line item of 15 other things. And I think I often fail to remember, Kim, you're making an assumption this is understood because it's in your brain and you live and breathe and you are in these meetings. You get these reports. Humble yourself. If you're not in these rooms, what do you know?
Right.
Honestly, maybe they didn't look at that email or didn't look at it carefully, or that was 6 weeks ago. And the common refrain we hear from faculty all the time, Elza, is we don't know what's going on. Nobody
Yes.
tells us anything. And even worse is when we as leaders say, well, I told so and so, and then when I told so and so, my request was please go back to your fill in the blank school, your department, your division, your lab, your clinic, your office space, and tell them. That's like the proverbial telephone game where I'm making an assumption that those people will go back and tell exactly
Mhm.
what I want to tell them to tell in the way with the detail. And so that's not fair to ask other people to tell everybody, hey, party at my place, tell everybody. You're missing context and detail and it's too many degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. You,
Correct.
you need you need to hear that over and over and over again and regular updates that are intentionally delivered for the faculty, not meant to go through 7 layers down the chain of some people will hear it, some people won't hear it.
Right, right. And if we look at the landscape in the world that we are, Kim, mergers and acquisitions are here to stay. They're really complex, messy, disruptive, but they don't have to be so disruptive. What I'm saying is the faculty affairs officers can be the difference between success and failure sometimes, between buy-in and burnout, between growth and erosion. So I hope we will continue this conversation and hopefully we can group again in the future with different type of information.
Dr. Elza Mylona, I knew you'd be dropping a lot of wisdom. Thank you so much for this course. For me, this is like the beginning. I need to study more about it, but I thank you for dumbing it down for me. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'll leave the parting thought to you, Dr. Mylona.
It was a real pleasure connecting with you today, and thank you for allowing me to share some of my thoughts. We're doing a manuscript. We're working on a manuscript with some other folks, so hopefully we're going to continue this in a different format. Thank you again.
Thanks, Elza.
Take care, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs. at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.